everyone, welcome to this week's Karma Cards. So the energy is ramping, the sun is doing its thing again. We've got the Schumann whiting out, which means we're getting inundated with a lot of high energy, which means again that people are going to be feeling this in the body. And not only that, but we're on a ramp upwards. So as the sun's energy comes into our planetary sphere, the earth is absorbing it and then it redistributes this energy. So we're going to see our electromagnetic field ramping up as we go through the end of this week. So on the 14th of July, that's Friday, in the northern hemisphere, we're going to start seeing a spike in our electromagnetic field, and people feel it there too. So if you've been noticing that your energy feels different, or maybe you're feeling stiffness that you don't normally feel, maybe a little heart palpitations, you know, obviously you want to check in with your body, make sure that it's not something else. But you can know that ascension is aiding whatever's going on in the body. So we've got all this big energy coming in. And we've had a couple of planets shift. We've got Mars, which has moved into the sign of Virgo. So our actions are really interesting because our actions are about getting organized, like getting our self organized so that we can take a more direct action. So you might be noticing a desire to tidy up spaces. That's the thing that's been hitting me. It's like suddenly I'm very aware of the spaces that were kind of blanked out in my mind. Now I'm like hyper fixated on. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? So you might be noticing that, or you just might be wanting to organize your thoughts or help yourself create more structure as we're feeling the influence of Mars in Virgo. And then the other movement that recently happened is Mercury has moved into the sign of Leo. So this is our thinking, and our thinking center is moving into a space of power, courage, sovereignty. So this idea of like, I am the creator being of my life. And remember, source is coming through all of us. So sometimes I hear detractors of manifesting or understanding the spiritual energy connection that we have, talking about how, people who think they're creating are thinking they're God. And it's not that. It's the understanding that God or source energy is working through you. And if we are truly made in the image of the creator, then would we not also be creators? And we see this in humanity, right? Women give birth to children, which is a creation, and it takes two people to do it. So we've got a very clear show that we are creator beings. We're literally creating. And when you move into your creator being space, in order to effectively create your life with intention, right, then we are owning the fact that how we are thinking about things, what we're feeling, our behavior, these dictate the actions, which will dictate the outcomes that we receive. So the mind is now moving into this space that Leo, occupies, which is about sovereignty. So it is about, and creation. So it is about understanding that I am creating the experience. And many times when I work with clients, one of the things that we discuss is how our perception of something is actually helping to manifest it. And so the more aware or conscious we get of how we are perceiving any given situation, we can actually help to get back into intention and create something that we mean to create, rather than letting something like our fear, our worries create for us, right? So a lot of times what happens is if we're thinking about something and we have a set thought about it, what we're doing is we are working to prove ourselves right. So when you start getting more intentional in your life, then you are actually doing the same thing. You're working to prove yourself right, but now you're working in a conscious way where you're realizing, like, look, if I hold this perception, if I hold a perception of lack, for example, and I keep focusing on how I don't want to experience lack and how, oh my God, there's all these bills I have to pay, and oh, this other thing happened that's getting taken away, then we're not really staying clear and intentional in that, because no one wants to experience that. And yet focusing in on that draws it to you. Whereas when you get intentional with this energy, you're focusing on what you like to experience, and you're thinking like, okay, what are the thoughts that I would think if I was experiencing this? And we are choosing those consciously, helping us to pull that experience closer to us. As you can see, there's a lot of, there is a type of manifesting, but it's an organizing, it's a getting connected to sovereignty in the mind and the ability to create. Like, you really, it's the thoughts are things concept is like right there in the forefront of the minds of people right now. And then we're getting organized in our action so that we can really execute that and bring those things to life. By the way, the next big energy that is coming up is the new moon in Cancer. That's happening on Monday, July 17th. And if you'd like to join us, you can go to this link here. It'll also be in the description, and join us for some conscious manifesting. So we're getting really intentional with our thoughts, using all this wonderful energy that's being provided for us right now, as well as some psychic Q&A. So if that sounds good, go to this link below, and I look forward to seeing you there. So it's really interesting is the message coming through this week from the team is it's more out there than some of the other messages I've brought you, which I hope you love. I do love it. And it came through in a meditation. I was doing some reading. I'll show you this book. This is what I read and then meditate on. This is called Downloads from the Nine by Matthias Fleury. Downloads from the Nine. Highly recommend it. It is a bit of a challenge to read, only because it's written in a very special way. Here's a few of the pages. What? You like the book? Skippy approves. And it's meant to stimulate the mind because it's activating multiple language structures. So there are some languages where it's read left to right, some are right to left, some are vertical, and so you're actually activating all those language structures, and it lights up other parts of your brain while you read it. Skippy! Skippy is now behind the monitor. Hopefully he doesn't knock it over. Can you please not destroy this session? Oh, Skippins. Okay, so he's sitting. Stop! He's trying to take my crystals. Well, he's getting sassy. All right, so the message that came through as I was reading this and absorbing the material and meditating on it. So one of the things that this book stated that I was reading was that all the things around you are not as solid as you believe them to be. They're simply living thoughts. Now, this is not a new concept. In fact, if you are familiar with A Course in Miracles, then you will know that that's basically one of the main premises of A Course in Miracles, is that this idea of something solid and permanent being here is an illusion. But what I loved about what they said is that everything you're experiencing are living thoughts. And that includes us, which again gets a little trippy because you're like, wait a minute, I'm completely here. I can feel myself. And of course, that's a mechanism of the experience that we're in. But if you think about living thought, and then you think about the nature of the building blocks of matter. So, you know how they say we're like 70 to 80% water, but if you actually go even deeper and go down to the molecular and cellular levels, what you find is that we're actually at those levels 1% mass and 99% empty space, right? So when you really think about it, you can start to see how we are living thought, because as much as we feel solid and strong and impenetrable, we're mostly empty space. And what is a thought but nothing? It's nothing but a frequency, a wave of consciousness that's happening. The reason why I wanted to bring this up, this is very powerful, and then I asked the team, like, what's the message? And they bring up the sun. And if you even look at this card, right, it looks a lot like a cell with a nucleus. There's the 1% mass, and there's all that empty space. And empty space, of course, doesn't mean that there's no substance. It just means it's not a mass. It's not something that has any weight to it. It's open, just like our consciousness. Your consciousness is not related to the matter that's around you. It's not related to the matter you inhabit. It's literally there before you're born, and it's going to be there after you're born, and so after you pass, rather. And so we're going to have one continuous experience of consciousness, but a temporary experience of matter. The reason why I think this is powerful when it comes to talking about your ability to create is that if you think about, okay, I want to change this matter, I want to change this mass, that feels intimidating because here it is, it exists, it's in a state. How am I going to manipulate this with thought to change it, right? That seems daunting to me. I don't know about to you, but when I think about being able to change empty space, well, suddenly I'm like, that's easy. that is completely pliable. Of course I can change it. Or change your thinking, right? Again, more pliable, easy to do, instant, right? And instantly, if we manage to change those thoughts, we can start creating something new. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with clients, they were struggling with something, and as soon as they were able to identify the thinking that was holding them in a pattern and switch it, I get messages like, oh my gosh, this thing came through. The thing I thought wasn't going to come through, it's suddenly coming through. Or all that pain and suffering I was feeling, I'm now at peace. Like I found peace. And it was like, of course, because all you had to do was manipulate empty space, change the thought, right? And if you're made up mostly of this empty space, and again, we're talking about the molecular cellular level, then it makes sense why higher dimensional beings always tell us that the physical body is one of the easiest things to heal. Because it's mostly this workable space. There's very, very little denseness that you're actually dealing with. You're mostly dealing with the frequency and the programming, the thinking, the consciousness that's there. So I just wanted to share that message with you. I hope it resonates with you. Or if you have questions, pop them in the comments. If you disagree, pop it in the comments. Just be respectful, but you could put it in there. Let me know your thoughts on that topic, because I find it there's something so freeing about really grokking that, right? So when we talk about this was an illusion, again, sometimes when I use that statement, even though I completely agree that we're working inside an illusion, something about it feels unflexible to me. It's like, okay, if I'm in an illusion, am I creating the illusion? Is something else creating? Like, are we all doing it? Like, how much influence do I have on this? But when I think about the fact that everything is living thoughts, like I'm thinking of this computer screen and therefore I'm experiencing it, or I'm thinking about my cat and therefore I experience it. Not to say that he doesn't have, consciousness and a soul. Of course he does. But there is an agreement and a belief I'm having about the shape he's taking, and I'm experiencing that. And when you think about it on that level, it really, it just introduces something interesting. So what came through in the meditation for me is I remembered a dream I had. I had an acting teacher in New York who he was teaching in Carnegie Hall, and he was a wonderful man. His name was Fred Karaman, and he taught at Carnegie Hall, which is kind of amazing that I got to study there. But he had passed while I was studying with him, and he'd come to me one time in a dream, and we were in the Akashic Records, although this time what it appeared to look like was like a secondhand bookstore, which was really interesting. But there were practice rooms in this bookstore. So I go into this practice room, and Fred's there, and he's like, it is so easy to manipulate matter. You can create anything. Watch. He's like, bring yourself into this room. And I'm like, but I'm in the room. He goes, no, bring yourself into this room. So there was a door, and I saw me walk through the door, and he was like, change something about you. Just change it. With your mind, just think it. So I'd think it, and then I watch it change. And it was like I was watching this hologram of myself reacting. And what I knew when I woke up was this was my higher self and Fred's higher self hanging out in the Akashic records, and he was showing me how easy it is to change the human avatar just by concentrating on it, by connecting with it and making a conscious decision to change something. He was showing me, he was like, it's that easy. And so when I was reading this, when I was meditating on it, I literally saw it, but this time, instead of watching it like in a dream, like how you're almost watching a movie, I closed my eyes and I could see the hologram of my body. And I was watching, I was just adding light to two areas, and I was like, I'm sending light, I'm reordering codes right now in the body. And it was such an amazing little meditation because, again, I was so caught up on the try to manipulate the matter or the mass part before. And this time I was just playing with the empty space, which, remember, 99% is empty space. And in doing that, it just, the visuals just flowed so easily. So if you feel compelled to read this book, I'm not an affiliate. I don't get anything from it other than the joy of sharing the information. But downloads from the 9, I highly recommend. And consider what I'm saying here about how easy it is for you to create from the space you're already in with what you have. As soon as you move into conscious creation and you recognize that it's not the mass that you have to move, it's the frequency, it's the thinking, and treating everything like a living thought, and see how differently you interact with the world around you. And with that, let's check out this week's karma card. If you're new to karma cards, let me quickly show you how these work. Got 3 decks here: planets, signs of the zodiac, and the houses of astrology. And I've already asked my team, what is the message you have for us this week? And I've got 2 sets of answers, a set in red, which are action related, and a set in blue, which are outcome related. And the way that you play is you tune in with that beautiful intuition of yours and feel, what is the guidance you're needing this week? Are you looking for action related guidance, or are you looking for outcomes? And of course, you can always choose both. And while you're choosing, let me tell you the timing for this reading. This reading is for July 12th through the 19th. And the flavor of this reading, we've got Mercury, which is one of the planets I was talking about today, in the sign of Leo. I freaking love it when they do this. So this is the placement that I was talking about earlier, that Mercury has just moved into Leo, and it is affecting the 11th house. So the 11th house is an interesting one because it's the hopes, wishes, friends, groups house, and the house of the humanitarian. So it's the future. It's what you desire for the future on a broader scale that's coming in. So for those of you who are choosing action, your spiritual action at this time is to communicate leadership for humanity's sake. So this goes back to what we were talking about, where the mind, again, is in this place of sovereignty. So leadership's another way of talking about that, right? Sovereignty is being self-governed, and leadership is leading by example. So it's asking us to communicate leading by example. So this could be something you say, it could be something you write, it could be something you're just expressing. You could just have the expression of standing in your leadership, and it is for humanity's sake, right? So one of the things that as we raise up in consciousness, we're going to remember is that we are sovereign beings. There is nothing over us. It's a part of us, and we're a part of it, right? And so this old structure of something over you and you are less than, that is part of a dark agenda. And yes, dark agendas get slipped in everywhere. So things that start out as pure or honest often get corrupted in the old paradigm we were experiencing. But we're coming out. We're all coming out of that. But right now, this is the thing that helps us the most, is getting clear that we're creating it. So if whatever it is we're experiencing that we're not liking, if we can recognize our part in it, and that doesn't mean, to take responsibility doesn't mean that to blame or say, I did that action. It's just simply seeing, like, even just believing that this thing had power over me, that was the part I played. Not necessarily what it did, but my belief that that had power over me. And when we collect and take responsibility for that belief, then we're moving into our sovereignty, into our power, into our leadership, and it's benefiting us on the whole. Mental action at this time. Analyze the creativeness of your hopes and wishes. Basically, spend time thinking about how thoughts become things, because everything's a living thought. So your hopes and wishes are being created as you desire them. And what we know is that the more time you spend with any thought in particular, the more invested you get into it, the more you are bringing it to life. So we're being asked to think about that process, that everything's a living thought and that thoughts become things. Physical action at this time. Let your mind tell you how to do what you want to and do it for the future. Again, when I hear this, I go right into future-oriented thinking, right? And this is a Dr. Joe Dispenza. This is his turf, his terminology, but I love it because many times we go to our past to create what's coming next, right? And that's why we end up experiencing the same situations or similar situations over and over every day. If you want to experience something different, you actually think about where you're going and then try to reverse engineer that. And you do it by making contact with that part of yourself that's already there, already doing it. So this is talking about letting yourself understand that if you want to do what you want to know how to do it, you actually have the answer to do it, but you can't get it from going backwards and go, what did I do before? You actually have to project forwards to the point of which I've already got it, right? So you go there and then you get the information of like, how did I do? Oh my gosh, I'm doing it. Okay, what did you do different than I'm doing now? That's a great question to ask in meditation of your future self, is what are you doing different than I'm doing right now? Your future self will always provide you that information because it wants you to manifest into that version of you. Right, so now let's look at outcomes for Mercury in Leo in the 11th house of hopes, wishes, and the future. The spiritual outcome at this time is the awareness of self-confidence to create freedom. So self-confidence, right, comes from your ability or your realization that you can do something. I want you to think about something that you know you can do. You know you can read, right? So it's like, do you feel confident that you could read this book? Yeah. Yes, I do. Right? So again, the more we can understand, so this is again a period, it's more a period of contemplation and thinking and considering the information rather than a lot of doing. So it's a lot of considering, okay, thoughts are things and everything's a living thought. Okay, let me sit with that one and let me allow that to unpack in my brain. Thoughts are things and everything's a living thought. What does that mean? Where does my mind go when I think those thoughts? So again, as we do that, it's like we become more confident in how it works, right? Until we've practiced even considering it, it might seem like that's pushing the boundaries or that's really out there or woo-woo. It could feel like you've left, the chat. You've left the chat of reality or something, when really all you need to do is sit and consider it, and that is what gives you the freedom to start creating from. Then you have the confidence. You're like, I get it now. And let me consider the things that I have thought about consciously that I've created. Like, for example, when you were in high school, maybe you wanted to go to a certain college. Maybe, right? And those who've had that experience, maybe you wanted it and you manifested it. And you might think, well, no, I applied and that's how I did. Yes, but you consciously chose to apply. What would have happened if you just been like, I wish that would happen, and take no action, right? But you took aligned action that would guarantee that. So again, manifesting isn't the same as magical thinking, which I think a lot of people who are against manifesting or think it's BS, that's what they think it is. Like, if I just want it hard enough, I'll get it. And that's not what it is at all. It's actually you becoming very consciously aware of your own thoughts, the patterns you're creating, how it's creating an outcome, and then getting crystal clear on, okay, this is actually what I want. Right? This thing over here that I'm not experiencing is what I want, and I know that my thoughts are connected to my feelings, then become behavior, then become choices that are actions I take that create that. So let me get really clear on what I'm currently thinking that's not bringing it to me, and what I need to be thinking to create that. So it's not a bring it to me, like please give it to me, thank you kind of thing, as some people treat it. It's actually quite conscientious, and it's really about being self-aware of your own thinking and where it's leading you, and taking responsibility for that. So there is a lot of aligned action, aligned behaviors that we actually need to do. It actually requires a bit of personal development to be able to manifest. And I think that if more people understood that, they wouldn't treat it like it's a toy or a game or pointless or delusional, because they would actually see, oh no, this is actually quite involved in order to produce it effectively. Mental outcome at this time: many thoughts about or from taking a chance on associations. All right, so this kind of goes into what I was just saying, but the taking a chance on associations is you actually sitting down and considering your perspective and like how it associates to what you're experiencing, because sometimes people compartmentalize that. They think their perspective is one thing and their experience is another, and they're actually deeply connected. So if you perceive something to be horrible and scary, you're going to work to prove it right, so that becomes your experience. If you perceive something to be loving and open and wonderful, you will work to prove that experience right. So what they're letting us know right now is that we need to take a chance on looking at our associations. What am I perceiving about this, and how is the outcome? See if you can put the two together. So in that, you might have, they're saying many words of or about. So again, I feel like a lot of like ahas come through in this week, because it's like, wait a minute, if I actually think about my perception and what I'm experiencing, oh, they do kind of fit like a puzzle piece. Wow, now I get it. Oh my gosh, that's why I keep experiencing this, because I haven't shifted this here. So now I have to ask myself, do I want to shift this, and how will I shift it? All right, physical outcome at this time: many words resulting from the impressiveness of your circle of friends. Now, this is really interesting too, because our perceptions actually attract other people, right? So we're attracting people from the level that we're perceiving from. And we see this all the time, whether it's a belief system that we're holding, a political view that we're holding, a hobby that we have in common. These are how we are associating and coming together. So there's a good chance, as you become aware of your perceptions, you're going to start seeing like, oh my gosh, this is why we're connected. And actually, we experience some similar things here. And you might actually be able to help adjust each other's perspectives for the good, right? Because this is about the hopes and wishes that you wish to manifest. And it's interesting that friends and hopes and wishes come together. There is a beautiful bond there between you moving in the direction you desire and the people that you admire and keep close to you. I mean, they tell it to us all the time, right? That you're kind of the amalgamation of the 5 closest friends you have. So this process has a beautiful ripple effect to it, where the more conscious you get about a perspective you're holding and the outcome it brings, then you're going to want to communicate that, because it's like, oh my gosh, I just figured something out. And they're going to be like, wow, you know what? Now that I think about it, I also notice this perspective created that. And you're like, oh wow. And so again, there's a lot of information shared during this time about creating, and very possibly you could be sharing information about how to create more cohesively in your own life and with more consciousness. And so spend time contemplating what we've talked about in this, understand you're a sovereign being, thoughts are things, and everything is a living thought. And as you contemplate that, this whole level of information is going to unlock within you, and you will be sharing that with others, and it's going to be a beautiful energy as we move forward into other movements like the lunar nodes changing and Venus retrograde coming up. So with that, I'm sending you so much love. I hope you find something amazing as you contemplate this. Share it in the comments if it's happened for you, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Mwah.